So I now would like to present two individuals who were instrumental in establishing the college that serves you today. They were long-term active members of the former BC Dietitians and Nutritionists Association, and their topic is appropriately titled The Evolution from the Association to the College Today. Our first speaker is Darlene Ravensdale, who's with us here today. Our second is Beverly Grice, and I would ask both of you to come up and share your thoughts with us.
We'll go on the right. No, okay. All right. You go first. Fern actually asked that I speak about the vision as opposed to all the years of hard work. She thought that it would be appropriate to reflect on that and see how we've come down this long road. Many of you may not be aware, but that time between when we first started looking at the idea of having regulation of title and initials and the actual formation of the CDBC was almost 25 years. That's a long time. We started in the early 1980s. That was the time, many of you remember, there was a proliferation of sort of counterculture type things, pseudo-nutritionists, strange titles, and so on. And it was decided at that time that what our vision was to have protection of both dietitian and nutritionist and initials, which later turned out to be RDN. And so that we could identify to the public who we are, the qualifications and expertise that we had, and also market ourselves to the public. The vision at the time could be summoned by saying we wanted, through this credentialing and marketing, to actually own the field of nutrition and dietetics. That was the future that we saw, where we would be the leaders and the practitioners who would provide safe, ethical nutrition care by fully qualified professionals. So in the early 80s, we started the work. By 1986, we were very successful in, under the Society Act, which was the only legislation we could use at the time, achieving protection of the words dietitian, nutritionist, and the combination dietitian-nutritionist, and the initials RDN. So that was a great breakthrough. And BCDNA at the time decided to start working on a marketing campaign. In fact, we began to develop some promotion strategies. We developed a brochure identifying who we were and what we did and so on. However, we couldn't rest on our laurels very long. Very shortly thereafter, probably about 2 or 3 years afterwards, the health professions legislation came into being. And it became very rapidly evident that what we had achieved through the Society Act was no longer going to be able to be used by us. In fact, we were told that probably within about 2 years, the terms that we had protected would no longer be available to us, that we would have to go through the health professions legislation to achieve registration of title. So we went back to work. And the original issues that we had to deal with when we were working through the Society Act and registration, we had pretty much dealt with. Originally, there was a lot of anxiety between BCDNA and some of the members about things like the evolution of the profession, where we were going to have regulation, we were going to have mandatory continuing education. Some of you will remember these discussions. Some people were very uncomfortable about the idea of disciplining members, and so on. When we started working on the health professionals legislation, we kind of got beyond that, but the big issues then became, well, if the college is going to be for public protection, what's it actually going to do for all the other things we care about? And the big issues for members were things like the continuing education, who was going to provide that, and an even greater issue was who was going to promote the dietitian, who was going to sell the idea of our expertise and qualifications and what we could do to the public, and to basically identify us as the leaders and the go-to people that we wanted to be. So there's a lot of controversy there. There were some other issues. Many of you will remember there was a lot of sense of concern that we were going to lose regional offices and regional organizations. There was a lot of value placed on having local meetings for networking and continuing education. Continuing education was a very big thing in those days because this was the era before teleconferencing, and getting to an event often involved driving a long distance and costing a lot of money. So it was something that was near and dear to many people. So at that time, we, in addition to trying to work through all the regulations, and I won't go into this, to get ready for submitting our application for designation, we also tried to look at where these other roles that were going to not be part of the college would go. And obviously, the major one was that they were going to be shifted to Dietitians of Canada. And Dietitians of Canada came into being from the old CDA, as you remember, about 1996. And at that time, those roles went to Dietitians of Canada. And I must say that at the time, it was kind of it took a bit of getting used to. BCDNA at that time became sort of a semi-pre-college type of organization where we began looking at qualifications, we began registration, we began preparing for regulatory functions that eventually would move to the college. So in about 1990, 1991, when the Health Professions Council was established, we started working really closely with them. And as many of you know, our big issue was around risk. That was a major issue. It's still an issue today in terms of the qualification of practitioners. And I won't go into that because it's already been addressed by many questions and so on. But when we were working with the Health Professions Council, we were really working on the whole idea of reserved acts. Just as a point of interest, I have to talk really quickly. You may know that we tried to get a lot more than we actually eventually received. And one of the issues we had to deal with was to try and be inclusive of food service dietitians who were saying to us, well, what's the college going to do for us? Because all this stuff is clinical. All the stuff you're pushing for reserved acts is in the clinical field. What about those of us who are with food? What about these other issues? So there were a lot of things that we were balancing while we were trying to work not only to meet the requirements of health professions legislation, but the requirements of our members. Where did we come along the field of this vision? Well, I think it's fair to say that continuing education has done pretty well. BC is doing an exemplary job of that, especially with all the new technologies and so on. I think we have to recognize, too, that one of the early dreams that we had was a national database where dietitians across the country would stop inventing the wheel in different provinces and have a central area where up-to-date practice information and practice tools and things that were development would go. DC has done a great job there. In terms of protection and promotion of the profession, DC again has done a superb job, but I'll just leave it with you to say that there's much more to be done, particularly with this issue now that's come up about the registered holistic nutritionist. We still need to do a lot of work, and it has to be obviously through a national association to achieve that goal that we had visualized so long ago. And that's actually 35 years ago now. We had the 10 years of the college being in place.
We're showing our age.
Yeah.
I had the honor to be the last president of BCDNA, and so I don't actually have a past president pin. I am wearing my president pin though. But this was a really important stage in the development of our profession as we moved from the college and into both the college and DC became the profession and the organization that supported our promoting the profession. We had the resolution
or special general meeting rather, to pass the resolution for BCDNA to cease to exist. That was in December 2003. So we had a final meeting in January, I believe it was. We took a few moments just to reflect on the role of the professional organization and to actually acknowledge all the hours and the vision that were spent to create, first of all, BCDA, who supported dietitians for years, and then pushed to move us into BCDNA, that recognized the name of both nutritionists and dietitians, and register that title, and get us set up so that we could move into the college. Now, the story of the events and activities of both those two organizations were in that final newsletter that Florence Wilson spent hours going through all our boxes of archives, and we just have a summary in the final newsletter. We also had as many of the past presidents as were in the country with us at that last meeting. It was really quite a neat gathering. And I have this spoon here because this one, it's sort of blueberry jam batch or something in between times, between then and now. But it actually had to stand in for the gavel, which is in the in the picture box there, because the picture box was off getting created at the time, and I think it hangs on the wall in the college now. There's a few other things like our pins that we had designed that are also in that box. We were also able to give the college a good financial start because we managed to persuade our members to agree to have a kind of a prepayment for their first college fees, and out of that we gave more than $60,000 to the college too. And they also got to use our office and office furniture to begin with, such as it was. And they took over our office on January the 15th, 2004. Behind the scenes, most of you will not know that all those file boxes that we had stored were sorted through. The essentials of all of BCDNA activities were put into 2 or 3 file boxes, if I recall correctly, and they were taken out to UBC, and they are actually in the archives at UBC. It includes some hard drives from computers that we had, and when I told the nice young man that there were the hard drives in there, he said, "Oh yes, the archivists know now we have to keep computer software available so that we can actually read all those old hard drives." They take the responsibility for that. So when I heard that, I decided, okay, BCDNA is just not going to go off into the ether. There is a piece of us still going to be around. And that, thank you for giving me the chance to tell everybody that.
Thank you so much for that. I was scared about the screen.